If you have been collecting for any period of time, you know that there are a few pieces out there that are simply just considered too expensive. Despite the downward trend in the secondary market, there are still chase pieces out there that are far above retail. Maybe for you, it's the recently released but highly exclusive Umbra Trooper. Or like me, a long sold out but true grail in every sense of the word, that being the DX13 Battle Damage Terminator. They are out there. But today, we're going to look at when you actually do need to go ahead and pull the trigger, and yes, at times maybe, you'll even need to break the bank. In the world of 6-scale collecting, no two words sum up the holes in our collections like want and need. As long as there are figures to collect, there will always be those pieces on the periphery that catch our eye and force us to answer the question of this: is it a want or actually a need?
Ghostbusters, what do you want?
Now, in the current state of the world, there are certainly more moments to take pause and truly evaluate our priorities when it comes to collectibles. But at the same time, going back to the question of whether a figure is a want or a need, the hard truth about that question is that only I can answer that for me, and only you can answer that for you. But we will try to make it more simple to make that determination in just a second. But before we do, why not give me a like on this video if you are liking this type of content, and of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because there is an incentive. As I mentioned before in my last video, once I get to 8,000, I will be giving away an InArt Joker detonator to anyone subscribed to both my and Will Foxification's channel, so get on it. But now, back to the topic at hand of determining wants and needs. I certainly don't have any skin in the game, but as I've said before, there are hype beasts out there, and it is their job to get you to want certain figures. They get kickbacks, they get discounts, they get all sorts of extra things, simply by you checking out their link in the description below. I'm not knocking any of those people, but get your bag, king and queens. That's just not my thing. But just because someone says that you need a figure doesn't necessarily mean that you do.
Gimme, I need.
But there are some figures out there that are a little bit different than your average one, and like me, are genuine needs to fill some holes in your collection. As you may know, forever, for me, it was the Blitzway Ecto 1 and the Ghostbusters. It was costly AF, but I finally bit the bullet a while back and acquired those needs to my collection. The reality is that a majority of the needs in our collection, unfortunately, come at a premium price tag simply because of the basics of supply and demand, and that's why I'm being very careful this time with the DX13, but we'll talk about that in a second. When a figure is scarce and demand is high, the more extreme the price point is going to be. Perhaps there was a figure that you missed out on because you weren't collecting at the time. Maybe your collection has evolved and there was that one rare piece that you may need to complete a line. Maybe a new figure has been announced and you're going to get it, a release that you plan to pick up, and you finally realize that there is a rarer companion piece out there that would simply make your display that much better than it was. Whatever your reasoning is, I'm going to give you 3 questions that you need to ask when you finally decide to bite the bullet or break the bank. The first question you have to ask yourself is, why do I need this? Not just want this. I'm going to use the example of the Ghostbusters because they still are some of the hardest to obtain and costliest pieces in all of 6-scale collecting, and the most expensive single pieces that I have ever bought. Now, Blitzway announced this 4-pack of Ghostbusters all the way back in 2018, and the Ecto itself in 2017. Since then, there's been a much chagrined reboot that continues to get an unbelievable amount of hate, the 40th anniversary of the Ghostbusters franchise, as well as official sequels to Ghostbusters, that being Afterlife and Frozen Empire. All those things together make for a perfect storm of everyone running to ride the Ghostbusters hype and nostalgia train.
Well, there's something you don't see every day.
Now, as I've said it before, that the Ghostbusters is something that I grew up with, and Stay Puft himself being a core memory for me as a child. It was my very first figure, or doll rather, that I can remember at 3 years old. That will always be tattooed on my brain as one of the first things that I ever had in my collection, if you wanted to call it that at the time. So you may be asking, how do you know that you needed these things and you just didn't want them? Well, I think that the only way you can really decide that is if there is a sentimental value attached to them, to a figure that you may be looking at? And to answer that for me, and as I said, only I can answer that for me, the answer was a resounding yes. Now, number 2, I asked myself, are these figures going to ever get any cheaper? Now, as I said, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is out, and we once again get to see some of the original Ghostbusters in it. Will these OG Blitzway pieces continue to spike and continue to go through the roof, where they're going to be continually unobtainable at a normal price point? Well, only time will tell, but it isn't looking good. Blitzway did release an Afterlife Ecto-1, but it's the dirty shell version of the classic hearse, and it's still kind of sitting around in comic shops because the price is just so absurd for an alternate version of that classic car. So why not just spend a little bit more and get the one you really want, or rather need, if you are a huge fan? But you may be asking, well, what does this have to do with your Terminator that you're currently hunting down right now? Well, I am so glad that you asked. Like third parties do, Present Toys decided to take a stab at the Ghostbusters and provide alternatives to the Blitzway set that is a little more budget friendly. But sadly, they really missed the mark and do not come anywhere close to the likenesses and quality of the original set. And I mean, not even close, driving the cost of the OGs even higher. That same company tried to do the same with the T800 and not quite. In my opinion, these budget-friendly versions of these figures are just not cutting it and are causing collectors to look back at the authentic rare pieces out there. And for me, after seeing the Present Toys Terminator compared to the actual Hot Toys version, yeah, I would rather pay the extra for the real deal. But you may be saying, Kiko, what about a reissue? Well, only time will tell. Then, and only then, will the cost of the OGs ever go down. And that's a big if. It's a sliding scale. As time goes on with no reissue, the cost keeps going up, only to come down if a reissue is announced. And then you're playing the wait game from announcement to release. And then how much is that worth to you? Once again, only you can answer that question. And lastly, number 3 is probably the most important. Can I responsibly make this purchase? As I said, we're using the term break the bank, which means that these are probably going to be going at a premium cost. And in the world of 6-scale collecting, this is not a cheap hobby, and it's not for the faint of wallet, especially when the cost of essential life needs, not wants, are going up as well. So with that being said, can you make a responsible decision on the purchases that you're going to make? Is it going to be something that you regret because it puts you further into debt? Is it going to be something that is your significant other happens to find they're going to be, what the F is this? What in the world are you doing? Spending that much on this? So ask yourself this question. Is this going to be the responsible thing to do? Now, there are ways to offset that. Perhaps there are some pieces that you need to remove from your collection to possibly fund the new pieces and the ones that mean something to you that are going to be coming in. Maybe sell something. Maybe put something up on eBay, Mercari, Facebook marketplaces, wherever you like to go to get some different funds that are coming in to offset that big, heavy expense. If you can confidently answer all 3 of those questions, then I say go ahead and break the bank. Now, something else to keep in mind that is equally important, and that is to find a reliable, safe place to make this purchase. You've heard it said here before, if a deal sounds too good to be true, it most likely probably is. Always remember that. If you're going to be doing PayPal, always make sure to do goods and services, not friends and family, unless this is someone you personally know or you're going to be meeting up with personally and picking it up. That's what I did with my Ecto, because that way, if something were to go wrong, to go awry, you are covered. Make sure, if it is eBay, that it is a reputable seller that has good feedback. Click on the negatives if they do happen to have any, and make sure it doesn't say scam or something like that along those lines. One of the reasons that I personally stick with eBay for a lot of my purchases is because of the buyer protection. If something goes wrong, most of the time, eBay does side with the buyer. So buy with confidence that way. If you are going to be making a marketplace purchase, make sure it is from a seller that someone else can vouch for. Don't be meeting in some back alley to get a good deal or anything along those lines. And then, when you finally pick up your item, make sure to display it with pride and confidence, knowing that you do not regret this decision. But realize, like me with my Ghostbusters, and one day, my DX13, this is one of my favorite pieces in my collection. Well, next up, I'm going to be addressing a serious problem on the channel, the flaking problem, when it comes to our figures. And I'm going to try, no promises, to get to the bottom of why it's happening and what we can do to stop it, or even fix it. All that and more will be coming to the channel soon, so make sure that you are subscribed and make sure you don't miss a single thing. Well, that's going to do it for us here today, but now it's your turn to respond and let me know down below that one piece that you are still chasing, that you could, in fact, see yourself responsibly breaking the bank on. I would love to hear which one it is. Until next time, happy collecting, and I'll be seeing you in our next video.